I'm actually going for a $1 trillion company.
That's Pujun Bhatnagar. He dropped out of Stanford, Harvard, and MIT to build startups.
Even before joining Harvard, I'm talking about dropping out of Harvard.
He told me how he doubled his startup's valuation to $75 million just 3 months after the last round, and why he personally walked away from $500,000, and why he's focused on solving problems in unsexy industries. This is Pujun Bhatnagar's founding journey.
All right, Pujun, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for coming on. Good to see you.
Of course, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for taking out the time.
Yeah, of course. No, so we've known each other for a while, and you told me right before we hopped on here that while we were talking, kind of doing our little intro before we start recording, 8 more people have paid and signed up for the product. So tell me, what are you building? Why is it growing so fast? Give me the backstory.
So our company specializes in putting sales tax on autopilot for e-commerce brands, B2C SaaS software, and B2B SaaS software. The idea of sales tax automation is not something that we invented. This has existed since 1970s, if not earlier. We did not invent the idea of sales tax in general. Has existed since the time beginning. But what we did was made a very unsexy, complicated, non-revenue generating problem into being like, with 7 clicks or 3 minutes, we will automate your sales tax compliance. What that means is, as a business owner, you focus on your revenue and all the back office sales tax compliance that is due every month. People often think that sales tax is due every year. What is due every month? We do that all for you. And so as we were like jumping on this call together, I was looking at the statistics, and while we were on the call, 8 people have like gone ahead, created a Kintsugi account and put their credit card down for that same exact reason. And the reason why it's working so well, dare I say, is the fact that we do not want to have demos. We do not want to have long sales cycles. We do not want to sell a vision and then have people jump into the product through onboarding. What we want to do is make it that simple. Hey, go create an account, connect your data, and in 3 minutes, put down your credit card. And then if you want to chat with us, by all means.
So obviously you guys are AI-powered software. A lot of people are tackling AI right now, past few years. You guys went after this incredibly sort of old, standardized, boring industry, I would say. And yet you find this giant opportunity where you're unlocking exponential growth. Why not go after something? I mean, obviously the results speak for themselves, but initially, why didn't you go after something that might be a little sexier?
I think unsexy problems make the most amount of money. And if I want to work on sexy things, I would have stayed in my PhD program at Stanford. I do not want to do research. When there's a gold rush, and there's a gold rush happening in e-commerce, and there's a gold rush happening in software. And I believe in empowering businesses to sell globally. And the biggest headache that businesses get when they're selling globally is compliance, right? It's not ads. It's not how do I find the users. It's not like how do I check out. It's actually like this one thing where I have done all the heavy lifting and people are willing to pay me and I collect payments. And then the government comes and says, hey, you owe us a piece of the pie. And it's such a feeling. You're like, but why is the invoicing software not automating this? Like, let me just do what I want to do, right?
If you're a founder, you're probably not getting enough sleep. We've all been there. But what you might not know is that even when you do sleep, you're probably not getting enough deep sleep. Deep sleep is an actual phase of your nightly sleep cycle. And it's responsible for controlling everything from your body's daily rejuvenation to your hunger cravings to boosting your energy during the day. And a big reason why people aren't getting enough deep sleep is because they're deficient in magnesium. Actually, over 80% of people don't get enough. Magnesium encourages relaxation on a cellular level, which is essential for sleep and low stress. Basically, not enough magnesium leads to more stress, which leads to less deep sleep, and the cycle repeats. But most supplements only include 1 maybe 2 forms of magnesium, when there are actually 7, and your body needs them all. That's why you should check out Magnesium Breakthrough. It has all 7 forms of magnesium to help you calm your mind, fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. Go to buyoptimizers.com/Hauck to get 10% off.
What would you say to another founder who's thinking about building an AI? Maybe they're in the idea maze right now, and they're trying to find these problem spaces that maybe are less obvious, but very, very painful. What should founders look for a good problem to solve with AI?
I think AI is like a forest fire. It is like a fire which has probably burned out a lot of like existing companies that are not AI native or AI powered. What a founder should always look for is essentially a key unlock about a problem being so unsexy and so irritating and so just like, I do not want to deal with it. I don't want to think about it. I want to pay somebody some amount of money and have it go away. Because AI is like mathematics of 21st century. It's like what computers did in the 1960s, right? We can automate things that we used to use people before. And you can apply this like amazing like tuned models to essentially like do whatever that you desire, but still the main hurdle remains is how do you apply the skill set in your toolbox? And you asked a question about how should founders go about finding these. I would say talk to fellow founders. Like, I need to give you credit. I think the opportunity that you created for us at Hack House allowed us to be submerged by these amazing group of people. And everyone was like, hey, and this is how we are going to monetize, or this is how we are going to make money, or this is how we are going to win this market. But the meta point that hit my brain going through that like intense exercises, everyone is talking about making money, making something profitable, making something sustainable. How can we help these companies focus on that increase in revenue? So what are the deterrents that basically force people to take the eye off the ball? And then I basically looked at like, okay, what is the least sexy area where no automation is happening and people are pretending to be software companies when they're like agencies in disguise? And I was like, let's attack that.
For anybody listening who doesn't know, Hack House was a version of my old company we called Launch House. Hack House was specifically for technical folks who wanted to come live together for a month, build a new startup, and then take it through a hackathon at the end. And Pujun, you, one of our early members, and you did the hackathon, you built something amazing. And myself and our other judges, we put you in 4th place. You didn't even make the podium, man, but then you go on and sell the company later.
It's all good. It's all good. I think that's the thing, right? Like, I think founders need to be able to put themselves out there, put a prototype, get punched on a daily basis, and dust themselves off and be like, there's another angle to this, and there's another angle to this. I think people look at my resume and they're like, oh, this guy must be a genius. He went to these like prestigious A-list schools, the Georgia Tech, Stanford, MIT, Harvard, all of these things. But really what it boils down to is, are you ready to do what it takes to get the job done or not? Because no degree proves that. What proves it is till what level will you go and how pig-headed you are. Like, people call it tenacity, people call it unwavering determination, but I think my brain just works on AM frequency when every other person's brain works on an FM frequency.
What do you mean by that? That's interesting.
I think this is a contradiction of life that I feel and I continue to feel, especially in my early 20s and as I'm going into my mid-30s. When I was at these like colleges and whatnot, I felt that I had a lot to give. I'm a hugely ambitious person. And I felt like there's all this life and energy in me that I want to put to use. But at the same time, I just felt frustrated with myself that, like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I went to all of these schools. I had just graduated with my master's degree from Stanford. I was working at Facebook, and I was a senior machine learning engineer. Like, life was great. My total comp was over $500,000 and whatnot. But I was like, why am I not shooting for the fences? And so you realize that, like, you have this tremendous opportunity. And so you feel like, oh, you're sitting on a pot of gold. And then you're feeling frustrated that you're not able to use that. And you're like constant in the state of, like, I can describe that as only irritation. You know?
It's the curse of being ambitious,
I guess. And I would talk about this, like, with my fellow friends and, like, colleagues, and people would be like, but we have XYZ things in life, other things that, like, they care about, and which is why they're doing what they're doing. And I respect that a lot. But for me, the other things were not that important in terms of, like, I was like, I will figure it out. But what I'm not willing to compromise on is to have regrets in terms of, like, I turn around and I'm 40, 50, 60 years old and I never shot for the fences. And I think that is where I do not understand other people. And perhaps other people do not understand me, is because I think for me, things make sense in terms of, like, of course we should take this risk. Of course we should move at the speed of light. Of course we should launch and launch and launch and launch and launch. And other people are like, no, but, like, let's do one more thing before putting ourselves out there.
What do you think the end state of that is, right? Like, let's say, you guys keep growing at the rate you're growing, the exponential curve hits, becomes $1 billion company, $10 billion company. What happens to your ambition and vision at that point?
First off, I'm actually going for $1 trillion company. Like, I just want to be honest. I joke about this with my founders and with my team. I already have a B in front of my name. I'm looking for that T now. The thing that I would tell you is, like, I think one of the unique aspects of leadership, and I have somehow found myself in this position of being a co-founder and CEO of an amazing company, is the journey never ends. The scope of the problem changes, but problems never end. I think, dare I say, we have all of us have worked in situations where we felt like we were not able to be our full selves and give it our all in a situation. And what I want to do is create a company and a culture of high performers, no matter where the person comes from, where they're living, what the color of their skin is, whatever their sexual orientation is, whatever it is, where they can do their best work. And there's no limit to the opportunities that they can afford. And compliance is something where, like, I'll share some statistics with you. Even if we capture 2% of the US market, we'd be doing $2 billion in revenue. There are 195 other countries in the world. And on top of it, by creating this amazing legacy, you can help people. Like, I'm an immigrant, and perhaps I can pass the torch of supporting a family, donating money, and creating a culture because of starting Kintsugi, and saying somebody else gets that opportunity because somebody took a chance on me when I came to the US. Do you know the concept of Kintsugi, or, like, what the word means?
Please tell us.
It comes from a Japanese art form of repairing broken pottery and joining it with gold. There's some semblance of it as sales tax is broken, data lives in silos, and so you need to have 360 view of revenue and a 360 view of HR in order to do sales tax correctly. And so we are building all these APIs that can plug in with Stripes, Chargebee, QuickBooks, Shopify, and get all of that information in one place and do everything for you without any human being in the loop. But the meta meaning of the word is, I think as we turn adults and as we go through life breaks us down. Happens. Growth is not linear. No matter how much we may show otherwise on our LinkedIn, it's not linear. There are always curveballs. And we feel broken in our own life. I'm sure both you and I can relate to this. And then it's up to us to bring our broken pieces together and somehow join them and say that we are more valuable than what we were, given the experience we had. So it's an homage to all my employees saying like, hey, we are imperfect, but us working together are creating something that's more valuable than the sum of the parts.
It's not just about the problem they're coming in to solve. It's about the way of working, how the company is run.
And also like, it's about like the pottery becomes more and more intricate when we transform and become better and better. Like, I'll give you an example. Other companies in the space take 3 to 4 years to expand into another country. We have built an engine because we moved so quickly that we were able to expand into Canada for Canadian VAT compliance in less than 20 days. And now we are expanding into Europe. And people are like, and VCs are like, hey, how are you doing this? But it's like, I do not understand why other people are not doing it using AI, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, you mentioned with no human in the loop. You said that a minute or two ago, and you sort of reiterated it there a little bit. That's really interesting to me because the trend right now, at least the trend that people talk about on X or on LinkedIn, is service as a software instead of software as a service, where you're basically building a tech-powered, AI-powered agency, and you're going at the problem from that direction. You seem like you're taking the other path. You're like, cut out the agency entirely. Let's just build the software.
That's a very conscious choice. I think 85% of what we spend on an overall company basis is spent on engineering. And that comes from a big belief that things that were not possible to automate 5 years ago are possible today. I think everyone likes to use the AI verbiage, and I'm no stranger to that because even when I started my PhD at Stanford, as a CS student, a lot of people were like AI, right? But you look under the hood and you have some sort of a human labor doing things. But for us, it's like, yes, we are going to spend more on engineering, but that is the right thing to do. I think we are not trying to replace human beings, but we are asking them to do more creative things by automating the more mundane tasks. So Google was not the first search engine. Facebook was not the first social network. But what they did is they used the data that was existing outside, right, that other competitors and other incumbents were not using, and they used it in their own unique flavor. I'll give you an example. Because of our PLG-led motion, we actually see a lot more data, exponentially more data, than any other company in the space. Because people just go in, they connect their data. And then we are able to leverage AI to basically say, hey, what is happening here? How are other companies in the sales tax domain handling these transactions versus what are we doing differently? But we have this flywheel effect going on where we can learn faster than anyone else. And then you apply this with, because I'm a nerd, you apply this with hardcore mathematics. You make this beautiful product saying, hey, I need to bring in a human in the loop only 0.00001% times if my algorithm is not more than 99.9999% sure. So instead of pinging a CPA maybe 1,000 times, you're pinging them once.
How do you build that type of flywheel? How do you know that you can get to that 99.999% of not needing the human in the loop? What's the secret there?
I mean, the secret is really understanding how to build ruling engines, how to build AI algorithms and LLM models that are focused on one vertical niche, in this case, sales tax. So we are not doing all different kinds of tax compliance. We are taking the rules and regulations that have to be published on city, county, and states' websites, and how do we parse them properly. I think a lot of people, what they do is they are trying to build foundational models about each and everything. But what we have built is a vertical, like ground up model that only talks about sales and use tax. So it is fundamentally different in that way. And so like the chat GPTs of the world, because they're training on all the larger data set, they're really good at answering questions about everything. Our model is crap about answering questions about anything other than sales tax, but it's really, really good at sales tax. And that comes from an understanding of like, how do you use the data correctly? I think a lot of people who are coming into the AI space, they do, okay, I'll do a little bit of fine tuning, or I'll do a little bit of like, I'll tweak things a little bit. Maybe they'll do a RAG implementation, right? But nobody's thinking about how to build things fundamentally.
It's interesting. I go back to after ChatGPT first launched in December 2022, so 2 years ago now. The hot take of the time that everyone was talking about was, OpenAI is going to eat everything. Eventually, ChatGPT will be able to do anything no other company will need to exist, basically. It was very hyperbolic. Where do you think, do you think that the future of these verticalized models, do you think that is a sustainable product, defensible product for the long run for you guys?
Definitely. I would highly argue that I think there's a case of horizontal foundation models for the day-to-day stuff. And there's a case of verticalized models for things like fintech and healthcare, where you don't want to get things wrong. And those are fundamentally two things that are built differently. Like when we talk about ChatGPT, we talk about hallucinations, we talk about making up stuff that may not be real. There are mathematical ways of controlling for that. But we don't do that in ChatGPT, not because the people who are training that are bad at their job. It's because of a choice that the AI researcher is making that, hey, in order to absorb this large corpus of text that may relate to multiple different domains and multiple different things and different types of talking points and whatnot, you need to provide some ambiguity for the algorithm to be able to generalize. But versus when you're going for something vertical, you're like, no, I want you to do the best job at this one goddamn thing.
Are those choices that you guys made at the level, like the infrastructure level, like in the actual foundation model level, or is it more so how you then prompt the model that you've created to handle certain use cases?
We have not done any prompt engineering, period. Everything, including the way our company's data syncs happen, are built from the ground up to be able to collect, process, and just transform the data that we need. And that ties into our PLG model of like, we don't gatekeep people by saying, hey, pay us $10,000 and we are going to onboard you in the next 3 weeks. We say, go connect the data. And that gives us much more advantages in terms of like learning from our customers that other people don't have. That is why I'm frankly like, I want to run at the speed of light because we have captured this lightning in a bottle, and that's what we are doing. And if anyone else can do this, like I encourage them to come, let's compete. Let's see what they can do. And competition is always healthy.
What are the trade-offs that you've needed to make as you've scaled so quickly? I think you said you guys have gone from 3 people to 70 people in less than a year. What are the trade-offs?
I think the biggest trade-offs is we oftentimes say no to customers than saying yes. And like, it doesn't feel right to like turn revenue away, but there's a reason why we are the highest ranked sales tax automation app on Shopify, period. in all of the Shopify ecosystem. It's because we know our advantages and we know where we are lacking. I think a lot of other folks, they fall into this trap of like, oh, what if we do this one-off thing for this one-off customer and that will give us 500K more in revenue and it's a big deal. But that is not how software works. I think in order to achieve things well and to master things well, you need to have, for every one thing that you're saying yes to, there has to be 3 things that you're saying no to. And this is a concept that I learned from Zuck at like Facebook during my time there. It's like the concept of ruthless prioritization. Like just really like what we are building and what we are not building.
I think a lot of people talk about that ruthless prioritization, but not a lot of people turn away 500K in revenue. That's another level.
That's fair, but if you don't turn away 500K in revenue, then you don't get 8 paid customers when you're on a podcast.
I agree. What I've heard from you so far is definitely like the founder mindset. It's very clear you've internalized that. You are a great example of the founder mindset. But you came from academia and then you worked in big tech kind of in between. So I'm curious, was this always your mindset or did it change when you sort of jumped into the startup world?
So I think like academia, at least my experience with academia has been very different from other people. I was very lucky to have my advisor, Percy Liang, guide me through things. And he is the embodiment of like what I say is perfection for me. And I every mentor that I have in the world, I see them as something that they do really, really well. And so what he used to do really, really well is whatever he put his mind to, he would craft nothing but gold when it came to like really deeply understanding what's happening with an AI system, what's happening foundationally on a statistical level with an AI model, like how are these things working? And he worked a lot in semantic classification. And so, yeah, while there was this AI hype that everyone was writing papers about ImageNet and CNNs were a big thing when I was in grad school. But for me, I think that clear goal of like, no, we are not going to take the easy way out and we are going to build something that's reproducible, like really build that muscle. And like, I was fortunate enough that when I graduated and decided to join one of the tech companies, I had offers from all the FANGs. And the reason I chose Facebook was, I think, say whatever you want to say about Zuckerberg, but like that man knows how to ruthlessly prioritize. And that is something that I've deeply, deeply value. He may not remember ever talking to me, but I see him as a mentor because of the fact that he has done 6 acquisitions, and 5 out of those 6 acquisitions have been multi-billion dollars. Investment in WhatsApp, investment in Oculus, investment in IG. Like Facebook shares were tanking, and this person just like ruthlessly prioritized, and it's trading now at like 535 or 560, right? So it's and the training I got at Facebook was this piece. Like my intern manager when I was just an intern, Daisy Shea, she taught me that. And then my engineering manager, Deepa Divakar, and then Shweta and Suchit, they really, really ingrained the fact that like, if there are 6 things that you're doing that you think that you need to do, stack rank them and physically like have a notebook, cross out the last 4 things as a mental commitment that you're not going to do them. The maximum you're going to do is 2. And you should be really happy if you get to the top one.
Doing something like having your one big thing every day, just staying focused on that is, more founders should be doing that.
Look, Rome was not built in a day. I think people, when I do these podcasts, people see of me as like a genius in like working and whatnot. But really, my team is what makes Kintsugi Kintsugi. My other 2 co-founders, Jeff and Barkin, Parkin being very heavily like detail oriented and having worked in M&A and like having worked with large data sets. And Jeff is just the PLG god and god of building data systems. Like he was head of data platforms at Atlassian for 6 years, the company who coined the term PLG, right? So I think while I am ambitious, the other thing that I am also reminded of is I always hire people who are smarter than me that keep me on my toes.
You're the generalist, you're the glue. Obviously, you're very knowledgeable about your domain, but having these specialists who are world class at one specific thing, that's how you bring together a team that you can always learn from. It can always push you to go harder and go faster.
Exactly. I think, and really, I think like when we were choosing the founding team, I've lived with them individually for over months and months, and really the thing that I selected for is, can this person take a punch in the face? And instead of being salty, and instead of, if they were done wrong in life, are they still kind and they learn from, hey, something up happened, or they think that they're going to be miserable for the rest of their lives and basically be angry. By the experiences I've gotten through the colleges that I've gone to, I've worked with some of the brilliant minds who are absolute to work with, right? Like absolutely like genius people, but like it feels like sometimes you just want to shake them. And it's like, I think really realizing, sitting with yourself, realizing that like I'm not perfect and hiring people who make our team into a well-rounded figure is something that I think crafts us apart. I think people focus a lot on like what AI to use and whatnot, but I think as important is the fact of like, hey, this person, you're probably gonna know them and their kids and probably their grandkids, and you're gonna be together. Like it's more important than probably a marriage.
What's the toughest thing that you've gone through with your co-founders where you've been able to pull together, solve the problem, and come out strong on the other side?
I think it was a decision of like, again, prioritization. When you're doing less than when you're doing less than 100K in revenue and somebody says, hey, I'll pay you $500,000, it's very tempting, right? It's realizing that let's take a step back, and the best thing I can do as a CEO is to listen to every point of view and say, we are going to say no to this because we are building towards this grand vision. And even though it would be great to collect this like 50K MRR check coming in every month, there's a bigger fish to fry. I think that was one. Number two was really like sitting down and talking about how our pricing is going to be. I think a lot of people start charging companies when they're providing no value. Like a lot of our competition does that. Other people in fintech do it. But for us, we were always about how do we first provide value, then charge. So our billing system was implemented in a way that we do not charge companies a single dollar for onboarding or for even connecting their data. Once they have done their first registration and first filing with us, then and only then do we charge. Right. And like somebody could cancel their account. Right. But I think it's, how do you differentiate yourself? And then coming back, it's easy to do prompt engineering and have your model scale to just, let's say, US sales tax. But if I were to do that, I would not be heavily investing in R&D. And people are like, wow, you're spending a lot of money on this. You could spend that on marketing or sales or operations. But again, it comes back to, what are we building? Be truthful to yourself, because I think when you start a company, you're a nobody, right? And you get a little bit of traction and you somewhat become somebody, and then people have opinions. Everyone is a goddamn expert. You listen to everyone, but you take everything with a grain of salt.
How do you have the conviction and then following that up with the discipline to know and stick to that global maximum versus getting pulled towards these local maxima that you uncover along the way?
I think it's all about like surrounding myself with people who would respectfully slap me into another dimension if I were to stray away from the goal. Every document in our company is public, and everything about what is our path to 10 million, what is our path to 50 million, and what is our path to 100 million, and then a billion, all of that has been written. I'm not saying we don't revise it, but it has been written so that when we hire these amazing people who have been wronged in the past, and we tell them, the first thing that people do is an open letter that's written by me to all the Kintsugi employees. I tell them, hold me accountable. And then it's a matter of like my colleagues basically saying, yo, go back and read this. And it's a very humbling experience, you know? Like I'm 32 and I have the title of like the CEO, and it sometimes feels really, really fucking good. But also internally we are like, no, I just go by Pooch, just like text me and like and we jam because they're my people, right? They're on my side.
What are you looking for in those people? How do you know they're your people?
I think what I look for is very high, like, of course, they should be world class, like, software engineers, world class marketers, world class insert X. But what I'm looking for in people are honestly like people who have been slighted in the past, who were in situations where they tried their best to make this company go from X to 100X or 1000X, but they were held back. I think focusing on failures and seeing how people respond to failures is much more important on focusing on successes. So one thing that we take very seriously, given that we are a remote first company, is how open and collaborative people are and how willing to lean in our people when it comes to getting shit done. Like if somebody posts something on Slack, who is the person accountable being like, I will drive this to the finish line?
I love that. Those are self-motivated, driven people who are going to hold you accountable.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, we are sacrificing a lot for this company, and our vision is to help businesses sell globally because if small businesses sell globally, they make more money. If they make more money, more local and sales taxes collected. As a result, more money goes back into society. You get better roads, better infrastructure, better like playgrounds, swimming pools for kids, etc. And I think that's a noble goal to like strive for.
Well, you're on your way, right? I mean, I think I saw that you guys doubled your valuation in 3 months. Is that true?
Yeah, yes.
How's that come about? That's crazy.
We raised our A at a 40 million post. And by the way, like we had other options and we decided to raise from the folks that we decided to raise because we didn't want to dilute ourselves or over dilute ourselves to a point where there would be cash just sitting in the bank. And then I think given that Kintsugi has this like reputation of how much we are investing in AI and how much are we investing in the tech, I think when a strategic like Airwallex came and they talked to each and every competitor of ours who is building in the space and they saw our APIs and our integrations and our customer feedback, they were like, we want to be part of this journey. And while I'm not at the liberty of talking about what is further to come, but I think if you think that was amazing, we are just getting started. So, you and my friend, some really exciting things that we are cooking. But I'll share this with you. I think like ideas come dime a dozen, but how do you execute them is what makes the difference. I think oftentimes I talk to like perhaps more younger founders, and they are like, "Hey, this idea is unique," and I have the theory that no idea is unique. It's the way you approach the idea is what makes it unique. It's I think the execution. It's like the day by day, the choices that you're making either puts your company on a different positive level or it breaks your company down. So these fundamental decisions are the decision trees that make.
Building an audience is a full-time job, or at least it can feel like that when you're busy running your startup. But with AI making software easier to build, getting distribution is more important than ever. I can help. After growing my LinkedIn to over 40,000 followers and having 100,000 across all platforms, as well as a 60,000 subscriber newsletter, I know how impactful having an audience can be when you're building a startup these days. So I started Megaphone Studios, a ghostwriting agency specifically built for founders and their startups. Think of us like your startup's chief content officer. We turn your LinkedIn, X, or newsletter into a machine for lead generation, follower growth, and building your influence as a thought leader in your space. Our process is super lightweight for you while still delivering content that only you uniquely could write. And our plans are flexible with no long-term lock-in because we know how fast things can change at startups. Oh, and I brought my buddy Blake Emal along to help me run the business. He has even more followers than I do. So email me at hauk@megaphone.network and mention the pod for a first month discount.
Yeah, the difference between getting 1% better and 1% worse every day is huge over
Yeah.
a decent timeline.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is, with that in mind and having a North Star defined of like, this is the only problem that we are solving, even though there are other sexier problems, I'm like, good, great, we are not solving that. Like, if you want to solve that, Kintsugi is not the right place for you. Like, no hard feelings, but this is what we are solving is, I think, supremely important.
You mentioned not wanting to over dilute at the A. I think that's interesting because some folks would say, when you're A or before, dilution doesn't matter too much. Just go for a certain partner, go for the blue chip tier one firm as your partner and take a shot at it because of the network or the connections or what have you. Explain to me the difference and why maybe that's wrong.
I think I have enough logos on my resume. And I at the end of the day, yes, those logos help, but they cannot overcompensate for a lack of product, a lack of engineering, and a lack of something working. Yes, you'll get more introductions. Yes, all of those things play a part. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But you know what matters? Something that just works.
That's true. At the end of the day, if you get organic growth, everything else is a rounding error.
Yeah. And that's my belief. Like, I think there are like entrepreneurs who optimize for that hype that they have and the aura that you get by raising from all these marquee logos. I think for us, it's like, again, what is the North Star? We are helping businesses of all sizes sell globally, which means out of state, out of nation, etc. And we are doing compliance. There's no mention of who are we raising money from. It's not there. So what are you ruthlessly prioritizing? Why is Pujun's ego coming into the way of like, hey, this money is more better than that money?
You're not looking at it from a vanity perspective. You're looking at it from just an objective, what's the right decision for the business based on where we're at perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're going as fast as you guys are going, the exponential curve is starting, going to hit true hypergrowth, already sort of experiencing the early signs of that. Everything must be breaking, I imagine, right? How do you ruthlessly prioritize when everything that you've already built it's probably breaking?
I think that's a massive kudos to Jeff and Barkin. We actually do not have breakages in our code and in our services because we do not have a backlog of bugs. So any bug that comes into the system, people drop everything and they fix the bug. And that's why like doubling down on R&D is hugely important for us rather than saying, let's put duct tape and wire and come back to it.
So not just solving it with some easy fix that's not going to hold, but actually investing the time in updating the system.
Investing the time updating the system, rewriting like bunch of like code that used to scale for 1,000 customers, but it's not going to scale for 100,000 customers. really investing in the R&D. And that's what at first, people were like, Pujun, you were working on smart and sexy problems and now you're doing sales tax. My dude. Any problem when you're dealing with billions, if not multi-billions and petabytes of data, become interesting challenges. Like, how do I show somebody's true sales tax liabilities and do the calculation in 3 minutes? No matter if they have 120 transactions or 2.5 billion transactions. There's a publicly listed company today that is live on Kintsugi that uses Kintsugi. We get 250,000 orders coming from one organization per day for that company, right? So how do you process that data? And that's why it's a data company. And like other people say no to them because they're like, oh, there's a human being in the loop. And you know what? After a million rows, Excel running on the best Windows laptop also gives away. And that's why you need to write things that scale.
You have this vision of what it's going to take to hit 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, a billion. And you guys are on your way. You're serving these giant customers already. You're solving these technical problems. What is the biggest challenge to reaching that $1 trillion level that you talked about earlier?
I think the biggest challenge to reaching that $1 trillion is building a sustainable business. Instead of optimizing for those logos and brands and hypes, essentially building something that is bigger than all of us, building that something valuable. I think that unless the company is in a very niche field, once you're doing more than $1 billion in revenue, you can expand into other categories that would unlock the 10 billion opportunity, and then the $50 billion opportunity and $100 billion opportunity, right? But what happens is, more often than not, because of the shortcuts that founders and companies take, which makes sense in that in the time and place, they do not build things that can scale. Like, we use serverless everywhere. So a lot of our problems is, oh, we got a larger client that is paying us more money because they have exponentially more amount of data. I can go, and because of the choices I've made, because I'm a nerd, and so is everyone else on the team, because we are very good at what we do, we can add more AWS machines to solve that problem faster. But that algorithm was written in a way that the only bottleneck is the amount of machines we can throw at it, right? And I think that is where a lot of companies start collapsing when they reach that $100 million or $1 billion, because they're burning too quickly. They're saying that they're a tech solution when they're not. They do not have a North Star. People are tired, man. Like, even $30 million is life-changing money if you have that in the bank. You gotta sit and ask yourself, are you happy with that? Because I'm not. And like I said, I think people do not understand me, and I've, in some sense, just given up. You saw me in New York. I'm just like, I don't understand how other people think, and I'm like, okay, cool beans. Maybe something is wrong with my brain, but I have one brain, and I know how to live with it, and I know how to use it.
No, I think we need to protect your brain at all costs, man. We need a few more of your brain out there in the world.
But again, I just want to take this moment to thank you. I still remember the feedback that you gave us in Hack House, and the way you were approaching the problem of hey, this is why it will work, this is why it won't work, and here are the crystal reasons why. I think the world is full of nice people, very nice people, but hear me out. I don't think nice people are the best people to surround yourself with. I think it's the kind people that you need in your life who can tell you respectfully that, hey, what you're doing is not going to work in XYZ ways, and tell you why you're going to fail so that you can revise your approach and keep that constant loop on. And I still remember sitting in the backside of, you're sitting on an outside table under the sun, and it was in Gramercy Park, and I came and talked to you, and you were like, look, man, these are the 4 reasons it won't work. right? And that's a gift.
Yeah. And I loved that you then were able to take that and go and build something that did work. And you guys took through to an acquisition, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think like that was a great journey in of itself. But what we realized was, I think, how do you approach problems? It's just like, if you really truly want to build $1 trillion company, what space should you be building in? It's the sexy things of the world where I could use my AI background and my logos and whatnot, and perhaps build an AI company that does get sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, which is going to be an amazing outcome. But that's not what I'm going for. I am hungry and I'm relentless and I'm very, very big headed.
One thing that I think you and I can relate on and maybe share some expertise to or share some knowledge with people who are listening is, you've been in AI since before LLMs were a thing, before transformers were a thing, back when it was called machine learning and that was all we knew. And, everyone was using XGBoost for everything and calling it a day. I was at Uber at the time and we were doing, various ML related things too. Curious from your perspective, what the difference is between the ML gold rush and the LLM gold rush now.
I think for me, and like perhaps I'll get a little nerdier with you for a second. I do not see things as ML or LLM or otherwise. I just everything, all of this is applied statistics. All of this is applied statistics done on scale, and we are just using different models of statistics to model things. And the better modeling we do about the problems that we are trying to solve, the better the output is. So that's the fundamental thing. Like, you need to have a core, very good understanding of statistics. That being said, let's talk about transformers and LLMs. They work because we are finally able to, on a hardware level and on a data level, be able to model language, how our brains think about. We're thinking about constantly what is the next word I should say in the context of what is being told. And that is what an LLM is doing. And then we make certain assumptions and whatnot. With these fundamental changes, I think the biggest unlock for AI was not the algorithms, and maybe I'll get crucified for this. It was actually the data and the computing that enabled these foundational models to be applied to these large corpuses of texts, right? So the Web 2.0 had to happen, the cloud computing had to happen. The race to the bottom, where like there are a couple of oligopolies, Amazon and Google GCP, who are winning the lion's share of computing, had to happen to make it so cheap that a nerdy person like me sitting in on my MacBook Air SSHing into a machine is able to build these models and build these fundamental models. With that comes the ML gold rush, because some of it is warranted because now we have data. Steve Jobs put a supercomputer in our pocket in 2006, and that was a step function. Same way, these LLMs are starting to generalize, where these are the next piece of human evolution. That being said, I think there are a lot of people here who are trying to sell snake oil, right? And that always happens, right? When medicine was discovered, a lot of people were like, drink this potion and you'll feel XYZ ways, right? It's just a stark truth of reality. And when money is involved, especially huge amounts of money is involved, hype gets created. But I think like I go back to, like, I got incredibly lucky when I like ran into Percy, my Stanford advisor. Was He was like, we are not going to buy into hype. We are going to do foundational stuff, the hard stuff. But if you are willing to go on this journey on the foundational stuff, you're going to learn things, these Lego blocks, that would fundamentally change how you look at data, how you look at modeling, and how you look at building these Lego pieces together.
How do you identify that snake oil, right? Maybe you're less technical than you are. How does somebody say this actually isn't going to be as valuable for my business or I shouldn't invest in this, right? How do you identify snake oil in AI?
I think the way to identify snake oil in AI is really pressure test. I think instead of believing the different scenarios, like actually go sit with the whatever the UI interface that the AI is using and ask the questions in the problem domain that it's claiming to solve. There are some obvious things, right? If ChatGPT says I can give you an answer to anything in the world, I'd be like, okay, cool. The first thing I'll do is I'll start talking in Japanese and see how well it translates, right? In the context. So there are some obvious, like, we are not there yet. I know we want to be there where we are talking to terminators and machines, but we are not. But the other things is like, really ask people and sit down and have a whiteboard and say, hey, teach me and walk me through, as a fourth grader, what is your model doing as a fourth grader? And if they're using big terms like transformers and LLMs and data extraction and whatnot, be like, yo, respectfully, like, explain to me like a third grader. And if they're not able to, that means A, either they're lying, B, which is even worse, is they do not themselves understand what is happening. I think it was Richard Feynman who said this like very poignantly. If a professor of any kind cannot explain a concept to you as if you're a third grader, they themselves do not understand what is going on. Right? So if a VC like asks me to like walk into a room and be like, yo, explain to me like a third grader, what are you doing and how is this different from whatever the everyone else is doing? And if I am not able to do that as a co-founder and as a CEO, then I have to do the hard work. And I think people do not bring it back to the basics when they should. They get scared with these big equations and they're like, oh, one shot ML and whatnot. And I'm like, hold on, like let's go back to pluses and minuses and walk me through the math. And it takes 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Do you think that CEOs now, especially in AI, but maybe just in general, do you think CEOs are better equipped to have a technical background than they were 10 years ago?
Again, another point of crucifixion maybe. If you're building a tech company and you're not a technical CEO, like what the are you? I'm sorry, like especially as a founder. I understand the non-founders, I really do. But as a founder, if you're building a tech company as a founder or co-founder, why the hell do you need a CEO? And I'm just being honest, like, I don't think I would serve a purpose at Kintsugi. It has become bigger than me, and I do not think I would serve a purpose if I didn't have the understanding that I do.
Yeah. I mean, that aligns with what Mark Andreessen said even 15 years ago when he was saying, he wrote a blog post that was like, how to hire a professional CEO. And it was just like one or two sentences. And it was basically like, don't do it.
I'll share another anecdote with you. I think if I was not technical, I would have a lot more fights with my CTO and my CPO because I'd be like, why the do we need to spend so much money? Why are we spending millions of dollars on R&D to do this when I can do this in Python script, right? And yeah, you can do that, but that would not scale for XYZ reasons that a non-technical person would not understand or not care to understand.
Okay. One other thing I want to talk to you about is dropping out of academia. I was going to touch on this earlier, but we moved on. You dropped out 3 times. I dropped out twice.
It's not a competition.
You got me beat, man. Do you think that, you dropped out of Sloan and then basically was working on a startup and then jumped back in to Harvard MBA just a couple months later. Why go back after dropping out of Sloan? And then, just why go back after dropping out of Sloan so quickly?
I don't think I talk about it enough. And I'll preface by saying all the love to MIT community and whatnot, great school. US makes it exponentially hard for immigrants to work on their startups. For somebody like me who has been in the US since they were 17, huge portion of my undergrad was paid for by US taxpayer dollars, even my PhD. which again, I ended up dropping out of Stanford, and then Sloan Fellowship I had as well. But I was very clear from the get-go that while I usually respect people who go into consulting, PE, VC, PM roles, that is not why I was at an MBA school. I was there because I'm a technical person and I needed to understand the basic one-on-one about entrepreneurship and businesses to be able to start my company. And there is a false promise that like these MBA schools say, hey, we teach you entrepreneurship, but have you ever learned swimming by reading about swimming?
No, you got to jump in the pool.
Yeah, that's number one. Number two is because I had already had a master's degree from my time at Stanford, MIT Sloan admin staff was not okay with me working on my startup idea while still staying in the US over the summer. And again, maybe perhaps I see the world through a different lens, but I was convinced that if I do not do this, somebody else will. Because I may be smart, I may be smarter than average, but I'm not an arrogant prick thinking that like, oh, only Pujun can build this. The time was of essence for me. And that's why like when MIT was like, yo, you can go work on the startup in your home country in India, I'm like, all my connections, all my resources, everything is here in the Valley, right? And I've given up a lot as an immigrant who is living in the US for 14 years to be here. And I am not going to leave any stone unturned in my pursuit to be successful. So that with the combination of like, hey, the moment is now, I dropped out. I went back in because Harvard was a lot more supportive in terms of like, they were like, we will support your entrepreneurship. Should you even decide to drop out, you can drop out. And they were much more pragmatic about, hey, there's a bigger fish to fry. We want to support you and we'll get you your visa and your green card should you need that at the moment. So I think in this scenario, I think Harvard Business School was more helpful to me, and I'm not making any generalizations, but they understood the startup game and they understood the fire that they saw in me, and they understood that there's something wrong with me, that I am willing, even before joining Harvard, I'm talking about dropping out of Harvard because I see this idea. And I think they recognized that. And I'm not saying that that makes me a special person. I think that just we were on the same wavelength, because I went there again to basically be like, I have not raised funds. So I had gotten into Harvard Business School, I'd gotten into MIT, I'd gotten into other schools as well for my MBA. And I reached out to them and I was like, look, I said no to you and I'd gone to Sloan, but I think I made the wrong call. I think I have an idea that would work, but I need help with my visa. Can you help or not? And I think they were mature enough to be like, yes.
So then fast forward a few months, you end up dropping. I think this was around the time that you did Hack House, if I'm remembering timeline correctly. What happened in those few months? It was like, I'm going to go all in. It's time to do this.
There was product market fit. And when you see that product market fit, you drop everything and you run. Sometimes, like, I think the best way to explain my personality is I'm a beggar at heart.
Yeah.
I don't think there would be any others. Perhaps I could be wrong, but I don't think any other CEO would want to call themselves beggar.
Mhm.
But I truly am. I just think that like I got incredibly lucky that somebody recognized my hard work and gave me the opportunities that I got. And I had a very supportive, very, very supportive mom who put everything on the back burner to make me who I am today.
Hmm.
So like, I'm really grateful for that. But when you have that opportunity in hand, it's just like, you need to be relentless. You need to be unwavering and you need to just go for it. And I think a lot of people are scared of taking risks And I do not understand those people. But for me, it's like, I'm scared of missing out. I'm just like trying to minimize that feeling of what if I had done that? What if I had put that thing in? And I'm not saying that this is a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, this is the only way I know how to operate in life. Truly, this is like, I'm not saying that I'm a big person that needs to be studied or whatnot, but I personally have thought about like what drives me and what makes me me. Yeah, I think even when I address my company and like anyone who joins, I say I operate like a beggar. I am hungry, I am relentless, and I'm unyielding.
Hmm.
I'll be the who, if you tell me no, I will come to you and come to you with 6 different suggestions and 3 recommendations and 1 strong recommendation of how we can approach this in this other way. Because I am not gonna give up the opportunity that has been given to me. That's a slap in the face to everyone who did not get that opportunity. And that's even a bigger slap in the face for people who sacrificed their lives, their careers, their everything to make sure that I am who I am today. That is what I owe to them.
It's an incredibly compassionate mindset that also enables you to go after, the things that are in front of you and the things that you want. It's amazing.
Yeah, and one of those people is you. Like I still remember I applied to like Hack House late, and you took a chance on me, right? And I would be yeah, and I would be forever grateful for that. Right? These like little things, they do not make sense in the moment, but only when you turn around, it's like you connect the dots, you get that feedback. I met some incredible minds like Saharsh in Hack House, right? Who is doing his own amazing startup. And it's like, meet some incredible friends like Saharsh, Sahil, to name a few. And just like the fact that people are building, go build, go launch. And I'm not saying I'm not sitting on a ivory like throne and saying I made it. No, I could go down tomorrow, but you know what keeps me up at night? It keeps me up at night is, am I performing at my 150%? It never keeps me up at night that like, oh, am I doing too much? And that is how I operate.
What do you do when you notice you're not at your 150%?
I think sometimes I soak my head in water is the first reaction and wash my face. Oftentimes I'm just hungry and dehydrated and I just need sleep. So there are times when I'm just like, world is ending, and I tell my loved ones, and they're like, okay, just go to bed. And then I go to bed, then I have a solution to it. There's always a solution to it. And I think when I'm frustrated, what I found is talking to founders like you. I think a founder community is so hugely important. And I'm not talking about the accelerators. Like, accelerators have their own incentives unless they are like nonprofits like StartX, in which case, like, yes, you should do them. Like Hack House, like, you guys did not take any equity, right? Like, again, people should do it. I have thoughts about accelerators that do take equity, and I think you can guess what. But for me, I think have your select small group of founders who you can ping on Thursday at 3 o'clock and be like, does anyone want to grab a drink? Does anyone want to talk? Because in that message at 2 p.m., you drop everything and you're like, my homie is going through some stuff and we are going to grab a drink and we are going to figure this out, or we are going to jump on a call. And there are times when I bring up my problems and my founder friends are like, shut the up. This is how you approach it. Now take your shot or whatnot. But it's starting a company and running a company is incredibly lonely, and you need your people. You just do.
Yeah, that's why we started Launch House and Hack House in the first place. It was during the pandemic. Everyone was lonely. We're like, well, let's bring them together.
Yeah, and I think like even your newsletter, right? Like what is happening. It shows that like you're not the only one who's building in the space. People are making new moves, and I think game sharpens other game.
So I want to, we're getting close to the end here. I want to go in a totally 180 direction for a second,
Sure.
which is you are not only a startup founder, you're also a spice mogul. Do you want to talk about your curated collection of spices here?
Definitely. I think Burlap and Barrel, I have been a big fan of their spices since I remember. And I think Ollie, who's one of the founders, incredible person who I met at a conference. And we, I'm not the most like outgoing broy person that I'll talk to everyone in the room. I like, yes, I'm social. I'll go say hi and whatnot. But we very much nerded out about the fact that he has a spice company and he has built a software company. He has been a VC. He has seen it all, and then he like started the spice company. And after talking to him for like 2-3 hours, I was like, man, I wish I had a way to just sending gifts to my friends, which are like the spice collection, because all of my friends, they come from different backgrounds, different parts of the world. And they're like, I really want to cook Indian food. And I'm like, you look at their pantry and you see only sea salt, and you're like, what the can I do with this right? So I think it was that. And like, it also is a chance to give back, because any person who ordered anything on that link, I personally, not through Kintsugi, but I personally did 100% donation match. And I don't make a ton of money. I have a founder salary, but it's like, with all the negativity in the world, I think like when somebody sits down and enjoys a delicious meal, and I'm not this person who's like, oh, is this authentic or not? Like, if you like butter chicken, go ahead, go crazy, eat butter chicken, my dude, and you have my blessing. But I want people, when they're sitting and they're like having food or having these experiences, they feel good. And I think that was just like a lighthearted, positive way of creating some good in the world.
People got to go check out the spice collections on your LinkedIn. Okay, couple rapid fire ones here to wrap us up. First, who is an investor that other founders should take money from?
I think I would say I have been incredibly lucky. I would say like Linus from Kybernite, Rahul from Venture Highway, who's now at General Catalyst. I think they just got their entire portfolio bought. And I would say like Lisa from Link Ventures. All these people, I think nobody's perfect, but these people are truly like people, and that like I can call and butt heads with, but I know that they have my back.
Huh.
And I think that's incredibly important. Do not optimize for logos. I'd say. I think the more you're optimizing for logos, you'd be one in 1,000 companies that are on their portfolio. And unless you are on that success rate, they'll not pay attention to you, because, again, they have bigger fish to fry. Just think from their perspective, right? They're in the business to make money. I think those investors are important. Angels are usually important. And more important than angels are customers. If a customer says, hey, I'll put in $1,000 in your company because I believe in the vision, you take that money no matter what.
Take that money so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's usually important.
It's also just a great signal to other investors too. What's one thing that you'd change about the startup world?
I think the one thing I would change about the startup world is I think I would focus on more diverse representation. Like, I think it's heavily skewed towards males. It's like the founder community is like sort of stacked up against females. And I just think, just from a statistic standpoint, there are amazing ideas that are waiting to happen that never happen because we don't give female founders an equal chance. Just statistically, we don't. And I think we as humanity are probably missing out on 50% of our efficiency by doing that.
Yeah, I think I remember a statistic that like something like 2% of venture capital funding goes to female founded companies. And we thought about that at Launch House, and that's why we had over 20%. I think it was 29% of all of our members were women.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I would change is like at a pre-seed level, VCs should just stop asking for data rooms. Just shut up. Just shut up. Like, we all know you're like looking at three things. You're looking at product market fit, you're looking at founder market fit, and you're looking at the size of the market.
Yep.
VCs who are like, can you share your data room? And you just, I sometimes like feel like telling them like, yo, you're investing at a pre-seed level. This this is an idea. You take it or you leave it. Stop making this more complicated and stop trying to sound more scientific than you are. This is a bet. You want to bet? Bet. Otherwise, don't. It's fine.
It's like, are you going to back me or not, basically?
Yeah, yeah, like stop wasting my time. Stop wasting your time. We both know what's happening. I just like I advise some startups that's like StartX, and they're like, oh, they're asking for my data room. Oh, things are going so well, and I'm like, wait, hold up. The what data room, my dude? Like my brother in Christ. There's no data. This is an idea. Either they're signing the check or not. And I think founders get like defensive, and they're like, no, Pujun, they're like this close. And then I talk to them 4 weeks and they're like, oh, it fell through. And I'm like, protect your time, my dude. Protect your time.
When you're pre-seed, the data room is your Stripe account and your code, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I would even go as far as to say like, don't even show your Stripe account. Don't even show your code. Be like, there's nothing here. Either you're backing me or you're not. Like, just period. I think I would draw the line there.
I agree. It's a waste of everybody's time at that stage.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. What is your number one piece of advice to a first-time founder?
I think first-time founder, I would say, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Launch. Stop finding this thing that inspires you, like, or finding something novel. Nothing is novel in life. Like, the only thing novel is you working on the idea, and you are the person who's unique, who is going to solve that idea in a way that has not been approached. Those would be my two pieces.
Last one then. What's something that you believe that most people disagree with you about?
I would say, I think like there's a possibility to make a $1 trillion company without turning into an.
That's the mission, right?
Yeah, like you have to be straightforward, and you have to hire and fire people if they are not doing what they need to do. But you don't have to be an about it. Like, I think people are like, no, on this journey to success, it gets to your head, but like, it takes two to tango.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. This was great. Tons of bombs that you dropped. I think folks will really enjoy the episode. Where can they find you? Where can they find Kintsugi?
I think me on LinkedIn, and Kintsugi's URL is just trykintsugi.com. Otherwise, just like search sales tax automation using AI, and you'll find us at the top.
Cool. Love it, man. Thanks for coming on.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. I write up my main takeaways from every conversation and make them available to all of our members at foundingjourney.com, along with a bunch of other perks and more content. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to Founding Journey on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. I post a new episode every Thursday. Also, consider leaving us a rating or a review. As a brand new podcast, this is the best way for us to get out there and founders to find us. See you next time.